Alright guys, so we are going to start our science lesson with a Brain Pop Junior video on springtime and weather, okay?
Okay.
Alright.
Finally, it's spring. That means winter is over.
Sorry. It said the video timed out. Don't worry.
It doesn't work that way.
Hey, you can't make it large screen?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we can. Refresh.
It's alright. It's loading.
Press refresh.
What is spring weather like?
There we go.
Spring is the season between winter and summer. In most places, spring is warmer than winter, but cooler than summer. In the spring, the days are longer than in the winter, and there are more hours of sunlight. Spring days in some places can be sunny and warm.
Brianna.
Right, Moby. Some areas get rain in the spring. There's an old saying about spring weather. April showers bring May flowers. In the spring, there can be strong storms. And some places might get tornadoes. A tornado is a spinning tube of air that moves really fast along the ground. As spring gets closer to summer, the weather gets warmer and warmer in most places. In the beginning of spring, I usually wear light sweaters and pants. But by the end of spring, I might wear t-shirts and shorts. When is spring?
When is spring, guys?
May is when summer starts. April. It's May until
April and May. Let's see what she says. Let's see what she says.
It takes 1 year for Earth to orbit or go around the sun.
March, April, and May are.
Our planet is tilted at an angle. Earth's tilt and orbit cause the seasons to change. The equator is an imaginary line around the middle of the Earth. On March 20th, the sun shines directly on the equator, and the lengths of day and night are almost equal. This marks the start of spring.
Did anybody say March?
Sometimes it doesn't
Addison?
March to May.
March, April, May.
Summer starts at the end of May.
So we're seeing that spring starts on March 20th because that's where the orbit is on the sun, right?
Spring ends around June 20th, but a lot of people consider March,
Good job, Lucy.
April, and May as the spring months.
Good job, Addie.
What happens to plants during the spring?
What happens?
In some places, the ground freezes in winter. Many plants stop growing. When the weather gets warmer, the ground thaws or melts. Many plants start growing again. In the spring, seeds sprout and grow. Trees grow leaves and buds, which will bloom into flowers. Flowers grow and bloom.
I see 2 raised hands. 3 raised hands. What's up, Iris?
Summer actually starts at the end of May. No, it doesn't.
Summer. The first day of summer is technically June 21st. Mina.
In spring, my apple trees grow flowers.
They bloom, right?
They turn into apples.
Yes. With that weather. All right, Abby, what are we doing?
Flowers and plants will start growing back to their stuff, and new flowers, and you can plant stuff.
Yes.
Like any seeds that will be for winter.
Yes.
In spring, there's more food
All
for
right.
animals.
Listen.
What happens to animals during the spring? Some animals migrate to warmer places for the winter. They migrate back in the spring. Animals that have been hibernating through the winter start moving around again in the spring. Bees and other insects come out too. Cool, that bird is building a nest. In the spring, most birds lay eggs, and later they hatch. Many animals have their young in the spring because food is plentiful. What do people do in springtime?
What do people do in springtime? Raise your hand. Mina.
Sometimes in May before it's summer, sometimes I might go to the pool or help my mom plant flowers.
Okay.
I had a bird
Does anyone have anything different? Evie?
play
They play?
outside.
Abigail?
They can do stuff to help nature sometimes if they like to.
Yeah? Abby?
Study rocks outside.
Study rocks outside. So you get to do things outside that we can't do in the wintertime, right?
Rocks and creatures.
Let's listen to Tion's answer. Addie, let's listen to Tion's answer. Abigail and Abby.
Oh, it's maybe those like more sports, like swimming.
More sports? Because you can do more outdoor sports, right? Okay. Let's finish this video.
I like going swimming.
Abby, can you turn around, please?
I like spring because we get to spend more time outdoors.
Abby?
People go on picnics, ride bikes,
Abby?
or go to baseball games.
Abby, the video is this way.
Spring is a good time for things to grow. Our family plants a garden in spring. What are you planting, Moby? Pizza seeds. Arbor Day is a special day in spring when people plant trees. It's a chance to help the community and learn about how our forests are changing. Earth Day is also celebrated in the spring. You learn how our planet is changing and find out what we can do to help the environment. Spring is a time for things to grow and change. I picked some flowers for you, Moby.
All right, friends. So now that we've watched this video on springtime and the changes in springtime, and we discussed a little bit about weather in springtime, I would like us to quietly, please, go sit on the carpet so we can read a book.
Okay. Me?
Yes, doing awesome.
Jump scare.
Need you to stay. I'm sorry. We're gonna move. Should we try to get their faces?
Yeah. You should.
We need to see if I can get both. Thank you, Brian. That was nice.
Stop looking at it. I will stop looking at it.
All right, friends, I have to scoot up a little bit so that everybody can see. Daniel, I need you to scoot over because you're sitting right in front of the camera. All we see is your head. All right, so when we're talking about weather, this book is called Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. Brianna and Iris has anybody seen the movie Claudia the Teen Smeagol? Yeah? Have you ever seen it?
I've seen first and second. With Flynn.
With Finn, yes.
There's a cartoon series too.
Yes, there is a cartoon series.
I don't like the
So this is the book that the movie was based off of. And we're going to discuss some crazy weather habits, okay? Let me see. Can everybody see if I hold it like this?
Yeah.
Oh, Brian, can you see over here?
I cannot see the words. You can't see the words. Why?
Back and hold it. Trust me.
It's 1990.
We were all sitting around the big kitchen table. It was Saturday morning, pancake morning. Mom was squeezing oranges for juice. Henry and I were betting on how many pancakes we each could eat. And Grandpa was doing the flipping. Seconds later, something flew through the air, headed toward the ceiling, and landed right on Henry. Okay. After we realized that the flying object was only a pancake, we all laughed. Even Grandpa. Breakfast continued quite uneventfully. All the other pancakes landed in the pan, and all of them were eaten, even the one that landed on Henry.
Oh my. Did Henry go?
You?
That's disgusting.
That night, touched off by the pancake incident at breakfast, Grandpa told us the best tall tale bedtime story he'd ever told. What's a tall tale?
Really good.
A good tale?
Really good.
Abby?
A very old tale, but it could be a myth.
A myth, yes. So a tall tale is a fable, a word that we learned earlier today. It is generally not true.
Yeah.
But it's fun, right? It's a fun story. Across an ocean, over lots of huge bumpy mountains, across 3 hot deserts, and 1 smaller ocean, there lay the tiny town of Chew and Swallow. Chew and Swallow. In most ways, it was very much like any other tiny town. It had a main street lined with stores, houses with trees and gardens around them, a schoolhouse, about 300 people, and some assorted cats and dogs. But there were no food stores in the town of Chew and Swallow. They didn't need any. The sky supplied all the food they could possibly eat. The only thing that was really different about Chew and Swallow was its weather. It came 3 times a day, at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Everything that everyone ate came from the sky.
I know what that means. I read the book.
Whatever the weather served, that was what they ate. But it never rained rain. It never snowed snow. And it never blew just wind. It rained things like soup and juice. It snowed mashed potatoes and green peas.
Ew.
And sometimes the wind blew in storms of hamburgers. The people could watch the weather report on television in the morning, and they would even hear a prediction for the next day's food. When the townspeople went outside, they carried their plates, cups, glasses, forks, spoons, knives, and napkins with them. That way, they would always be prepared for any kind of weather. If there were leftovers, and there usually were, the people took them home and put them in their refrigerators in case they got hungry in between meals. The menu varied. By the time they woke up in the morning, breakfast was coming down. After a brief shower of orange juice, low clouds of sunny-side-up eggs moved in, followed by pieces of toast. Butter and jelly sprinkled down from the toast. And most of the time, it rained milk afterwards. For lunch one day, frankfurters, which are hot dogs, already in their rolls, blew in from the northeast at about 5 miles per hour. There were mustard clouds nearby. Then the wind shifted to the east and brought in baked beans. A drizzle of soda finished off the meal.
Yummy! Drizzle of mustard.
Dinner one night consisted of lamb chops, becoming heavy at times with occasional ketchup. Periods of peas and baked potatoes were followed by gradual clearing, with wonderful jello setting in the west.
Yummy!
The sanitation department of Chew and Swallow had a rather unusual job for a sanitation department. Does anyone know what a sanitation department does?
No.
Lucas?
A place that cleans up things.
Yeah, they clean up.
Like a janitor.
Yes,
Oh no.
but for a city, right? It had to remove the food that fell on the houses and sidewalks and lawns. The workers cleaned things up after every meal and fed all the dogs and cats. Then they emptied some of it into the surrounding oceans for the fish and turtles and whales. The rest of the food was put back into the earth so that the soil would be richer for the people's flower gardens. Life for the townspeople was delicious until the weather took a turn for the worse. One day there was nothing but gorgonzola cheese all day long. The next day there was only broccoli, all overcooked. And the next day there were Brussels sprouts and peanut butter with mayonnaise.
Oh!
Another day was a pea soup fog. No one could see where they were going, and they could barely find the rest of their meal that got stuck in the fog.
Ew. Pancakes. Yum.
The food was getting larger and larger, and so were the portions. Lucy? The people were getting frightened. Violent storms blew up frequently. Awful things were happening. One Tuesday, there was a hurricane of bread and rolls all day long and into the night. There were soft rolls and hard rolls, some with seeds and some without. There was white bread and rye and whole wheat toast. Most of it was larger than they had ever seen bread and rolls before. It was a terrible day. Everyone had to stay indoors. Roofs were damaged, and the sanitation department was beside itself. The mess took the workers 4 days to clean up, and the sea was full of floating rolls. To help the people, to help out, the people piled up as much bread as they could in their backyards. The birds picked at it a bit, but it just stayed there and got staler and staler. There was a storm of pancakes one morning and a downpour of maple syrup that nearly flooded the town. A huge pancake covered the school. No one could get it off because of its weight, so they had to close the school.
Oh my god.
We're still going. Lunch one day brought 15-inch drifts of ice, of cream cheese and jelly sandwiches. Everyone ate themselves sick, and the day ended with a stomachache.
Oh god.
There was an awful salt and pepper wind, accompanied by an even worse tomato tornado. People were sneezing themselves silly and running to avoid the tomatoes. The town was a mess. There were seeds and pulp everywhere.
Oh no. Pulp. Why would there be pulp? The pulp thing would be this big. The pulp. Since the pancake was too heavy to lift, they could invite the whole town over to eat it. I know.
They could if they were hungry, right?
I could eat it all.
The sanitation department gave up. The job was too big. Everyone feared for their lives. They couldn't go outside most of the time. Many houses had been badly damaged by giant meatballs. Stores were boarded up, and there were no more school for the children.
Yeah!
A decision was made to abandon the town of Chew and Swallow. It was a
Oh.
matter of survival. What does abandon mean?
Leave.
Just left
behind.
Sayonara.
Leave.
The people glued together the giant pieces of stale bread sandwich style with peanut butter,
Ew.
and took the absolute necessities with them and set sail on the rafts for a new land.
The shark's eating it. The shark's eating
After being afloat for a week, they finally reached a small coastal town which welcomed them. The bread had held up surprisingly well enough for them to build temporary houses for themselves of it. The children began school again, and the adults all tried to find places for themselves in the new land. The biggest change they had to make was getting used to buying food at a supermarket. They found it odd that the food was kept on shelves, packaged in boxes and cans and bottles. Meat that had to be cooked was kept in large refrigerators. Nothing came down from the sky except rain and snow. The clouds above their heads were not made of fried eggs. No one ever got hit by a hamburger again. And nobody dared to go back to Chew and Swallow to find out what had happened to it. They were too afraid. Henry and I were awake until the very end of Grandpa's story. I remember his goodnight kiss. The next morning we woke up to see snow falling outside our window. We ran downstairs for breakfast and ate it a little faster than usual so we could go sledding with Grandpa. It's funny, but even as we were sliding down the hill, we thought we saw a giant pat of butter at the top, and we could almost smell mashed potatoes.
Oh no.
So, Daniel, no thank you. So now that we have studied some interesting weather. And we watched our video talking about how the seasons change and springtime brings rain, right? And sometimes thunderstorms. Mrs. Kessler has kindly put out a worksheet, a writing prompt worksheet about Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. But the prompt is, instead of meatballs, I would enjoy it if it rained, and you're going to pick something. And then you're going to write about that something. I want it to rain this because you can flip the paper over, Abby. You can flip the paper over and write more if you need to, because I want to hear your guys' stories. And there is even a spot on there to draw pictures. So write me a good story about what you would like to rain from the sky in the springtime and why. It can be any one. It can be
with vanilla and chocolate.
Oh, Brian, let me make room for your desk here.
Yeah.
Should be quietly working on our papers. No, it does not have to be food.
It could be just baby rain.
Yes.
It could just rain. If you really wanted it to. It doesn't even have to be a food. I don't know. Dude, look at this new or it could rain.
I found pictures on the floor and put them in the bin over here.
Mine says the same exact thing. I want it to rain. No bright idea. That's not how you spell E.
You have no ideas?
I didn't spell bright idea. Ice cream rain and going down the
What is this going to be? Grilled fish?
Is that how you spell grill?
Yes, that's how you spell Maddie, we don't need to be yelling. We're a little loud. We're a little loud.
Can I use the eraser?
Oh, Brian, you wrote that much already? I think that's fabulous. That is a great answer. Are you all done?
Yeah. Oh, idea. I wish it would. Thank you.
And there's a picture.
Abby, you just copied it.
I did.
I can write stuffed animals.
You've already come up with several ideas now. And write about it, please, because you're distracting your friends.
Back to gadgets.
Boxes falling from the sky.
I kind of want to write hey, we help me spell magic. So many what? M-A-I-C. I only know magic.
Are you going to draw some Porgies falling from the sky?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Porgy. I'm still thinking. That's a jump scare. That how you spell goodness? Because
What is that? Dollars? Okay.
I did $100. It sounds like I was trying to say grilled fish. I wish it was green grilled fish because I could stuff my mouth with all the goodness.
I think that's a fabulous answer.
My dad had a tarantula.
Yes, and then don't forget your name at the end.
From out of the sky. Daddy, are you there? Porgies? Yeah. What's Maddie? Daddy, it's raining from out of the sky. It's raining porgies from out of the sky. You soap their mouth and you chop their head off. I was helping Maddie spell the word. And lots of spinach.
Right, I've hit a 25-minute limit here. I think we gotta.
That's all I got. Can I?